Donation from Evil Yoda that says, look forward to SGDQ every year. Can't wait for a whole week of games. And now, it is time. The moment you guys have been waiting for. It is time for some Cave Story 3D with Supreme Dirt. Take it away.
Hi. So, I am Supreme Dirt, probably better known as Seer in most spaces these days. And this is going to be Cave Story 3D. We're going to jump right in if we're ready to start. So, 3, 2, 1, go. So this is Cave Story 3D. You probably know Cave Story as that freeware game made by one guy, etc., etc. Which there's actually quite a bit more into that story, but we're not here about that today. So, Cave Story 3D was this remake of the game made by NIS America and Nicalis in 2011, where they made the graphics 3D. That's added a bunch of extra items, added a couple of areas, a bunch of really interesting things. But if you notice, if you played the original game, seen runs of it, you're probably wondering, how do you do reverse boss order, or reverse boss adventure, as I call it, in a game that's as linear as this? Well, there were a couple of slight oversights when they ported this game. They redid the inventory to be 3D on the bottom screen, as you can see. And they made a small little mistake, which we're going to get to in a second. But before that, just a couple of small things about the movement in this game. So as you would expect with a lot of older platformers, on the ground you experience friction. And as a result, you move a little bit slower on the ground. So I'm going to be jumping as much as possible, and probably bumping and moving all the time I save from the jumping. You know, just speedrunning things. So they made a small mistake with the inventory. We're going to get through the opening cutscene. And normally, if you're playing this game casually, or even in a speedrun, you would go off to the left. You would collect the locket. You would go to the right. But we're not going to do any of that. So we're going to go right to the ball rock fight, which currently can't. Oh. Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to item quit. And what the item quitting is they made a mistake where the game doesn't actually ever reset whether the inventory is open or closed. And the inventory uses the same script system as the rest of the game. So what happens when you open the inventory is the game, it doesn't unload anything ever, first of all, and this is incredibly important. The game loads the inventory script. It saves what the last loaded script was, and then it opens the inventory. And when you close the inventory, it reloads the original. I just fucked. This is gonna happen a lot. It's the nature of the game. So we can watch the cutscene again. So you load the wrong. When you close the inventory, it loads the original script. But if you exit the game never actually clears whether the inventory is open or not. So if you reload a file, the inventory is still open, and the script that should be reloaded is still the script when you pause the game. So we can load the wrong scripts into different areas. Like right now, I put the inventory open. Hang on, need to do the hardest trick in the game. We quit in Shack, so we loaded the script when the inventory exited the inventory in script forms. And we can activate the ball rock fight. This is very important to do on the second file, however, because if you do that on the first file, you have effectively killed the ball rock as far as the game is concerned. Also, we're collecting the map system because I don't want to get lost, and for no other reasons you should be suspicious of. So we need to preserve Balrog as not being killed in the shack, so we have to do it on file 2. Now, something that I've had people mention is we actually make use of the time attack file, which technically you don't have access to until you've beaten the game once. But like you literally cannot remove it, and it makes the run more interesting. So we're going to use the time attack. We're going to open the fireball test, which corresponds to specifically the event that we're going to jump over the trigger here for the tutorial text, which specifically corresponds to the event for unlocking Arthur's house door. Because we don't have the key, but the event we're actually unlocking it is its own event. So we can just go in. We're gonna then item quit again in Arthur's house. And Arthur's house has a couple of unused exits, one of which leading to Sandy Zone, which conveniently happens to correspond to the liquor store. Then we're going to save here. So if you haven't figured it out, the map system is kind of important because being able to arbitrarily execute whatever we want from a script, provided we can interact with the correct thing, is rather powerful. And this also occurs when we open the inventory. When we have the inventory open, we can interact with certain things. Usually this doesn't matter, but Arthur's house actually has event IDs high enough that we can actually interact with them with the inventory, which map system conveniently corresponds to the teleporter command for Bushlands, which allows us to teleport to Bushlands. Now it's a bit I will stop block because the game is not giving me back control from the teleport command. Now I'm just gonna focus for a bit to not die because I have 3 HP. And now we have Booster 2.0 because that corresponded to the event in the time attack for all that stuff. That corresponded to the event in time attack. Just a little bit of safety. That opens up and gives you the booster, the arms barrier, and the 290 kicker. And these are all corresponding to the events that give you weapons, which is very convenient because before we would have to do a rather long and annoying setup to get a spur immediately. And while it was interesting in its own right, it's a little less interesting. So here we're going to take a small little detour, get a little bit of safety, because while I shouldn't die in a run, especially on easy difficulty, it's best to just, ensure. This game is, as you probably figured out, this game's a little difficult to commentate and run at the same time. So we're going to get a little bit safe. So we're going to collect a bunch of life capsules here because normally when you collect a life capsule, the game destroys the life capsule, so you can't recollect it. But this is what's happening here is the idea of this Hulu here corresponds to an idea that doesn't exist in Execution Chamber. So there is no error handling whatsoever in Cave Story 3D, in the favorite game as well. So if the game reaches a point where there's no event, it just runs whatever's there. And as a result, what would come after the next event after the event ID that this is supposed to have is the life capsule in Execution Chamber. And this just allows us to collect as many life capsules as we'd like, which is slow but safe. Because, dying is a little bit slower. And the other thing about that is the game appends null terminators to the scripts that it loads. And those null terminators also count as a stop point. But the game will still execute whatever is there. Which, if you got the game never actually unloads any scripts, I think you can imagine what might be coming. That was definitely part of the route. I promise. So, we are going to pick up this key. I timed this, it takes 1 whole second to grab this. So, a fun thing... A fun thing in this route, and in this game in general, is that almost everything in the entire game runs on the script system. Endings, items, all text, teleporters, and we can abuse some of this, especially endings. So as you remember, if you've played this game casually, sorry for spoilers, but the normal ending of this game shows a cutscene of you watching the island fall. And that is actually transitioning between the real areas of the game. And oh, I'm getting this. And because of that, if we, as you recall, we can break the execution of any event that's currently going on. And as a result, we can break out of the normal ending cutscene. And we will see that in just a moment. Right now, I'm collecting the few items that are required for later in the round. The locket is required to, first of all, to trigger the Balrog fight as intended, because as intended, kills for bosses is actually part of the definition, because you can just trigger the boss death events. And so just for spirit of the category, you have to kill the bosses as intended by reducing their health to 0. So we are going to... So the reason that we have to effectively kill Balrog by triggering the event of Balrog, despite being over, is because we need to enter Cemetery, because we need Arthur's key for... It's not technically required, but it saves a lot of time to grab this here. But of course, we're not bringing it on this file, because Arthur happens to keep a spare key in his home, which is now right here, because these flowers are just really useful. So we got Arthur's key, we collected Locket because 1, we need it for the Balrog fight, and 2, we need it for the Balrog fight, and 2, we need to basically it corresponds to the teleporter location for Labyrinth. And we are going to need to get to the Labyrinth with the inventory open, because that's the thing, is we can get to a lot of areas with the inventory open, which is very important because we can arbitrarily load the scripts in certain areas. So here, there's a problem with killing the undead core first, and that is that in order to get out of the ending sequence after killing Misery, we actually need the Iron Bond, because the only save point after there, because we need to save in order to get out, is... The only save point after there is in the second version of the prefab building. And to get there, we need the Iron Bond. So we actually need to get the Iron Bond as early as possible. So we are going to go grab the Iron Bond, because that is all that unlocks the prefab door. The only thing the game checks for is the Iron Bond. So we are going to collect Mapignon. We are going to now load Box because we need to overflow. Which, I am loading. We're going to teleport to the Destroyed Egg Corridor, and we are going to trigger the normal ending. The reason we use the rescue key to travel to the Destroyed Egg Corridor is because it's corresponding to an... Basically, it doesn't disable our controls. There's a reason for that, don't worry about that. So we're going to use this, we're going to go to Plantation. In Plantation, we're going to close the inventory, we're just going to load the Mimika Village save point script. which doesn't have IDs after, I believe, 100. And as a result, anything we interact with over that event ID, we are going to hit the null terminator and execute just whatever's there. And because it's loading plantation script now, it's loaded plantation script. We close the inventory to load an box script. We're going to interact with the store, and it's going to run what happens to be there, which is this entrance right here. Actually, I'm going to take the one that doesn't risk so much. So we're going to inventory exit here because we need a save file that is in plantation for later. Because we are going to be using all 3 save files. There's a lot of save file abuse because the main clutch of this game revolves around the save function. You think it revolves around the inventory, but not really. It's really the saves that are super essential. So we're going to input implantation. Because we need the iron bond, we need to be able to give Curly the map neon, which Curly is not currently in plantation. And now we're going to teleport to the labyrinth because we've got the script stored from plantation, which is where you would normally give Curly a thing. And as you know, every event in this game is just that. It's an event, it's in a script. And if we can find an object with the same ID as that event, then we can just give Curly the back neon, which happens to be this light capsule, which there's going to be a theme here. A lot of the objects that they added in this game happen to have really convenient event IDs. You have the trigger in the start point, which is a tutorial, but it also happens to be incredibly useful for this speedrun. In fact, it's what allows any percent to be a 3-minute run, which is significantly faster than every other version of the game, which of course makes this the best version of the game because that's how that works. I've decided. So we need to get back to Mimiga Village, which, as you know, is very easy because we have a save file there. And while we could get there just on our own, this is a lot faster. We're going to run through this door. We're going to unlock Arthur's house, which happens to be here in Labyrinth. We're going to save. Now, we need to get up to Dead Core, which, as you recall, if you know much about this game, you know that the door to Last Cave you can't even enter it until you completed the sequence implementation. But again, every event in this game isn't just lines of text. So we are going to travel back to the destroyed corridor. We are going to trigger, this is called the breakdown glitch, named by the only other run, because the only other runner named it that because breakdown is the music track that plays during this cutscene normally. It doesn't play because the event to play it doesn't ever play. But here we can get to Sand Zone. There's a sign here, and that sign's ID happens to correspond to the exact ID of entering Last Cave specifically, which allows us to enter Last Cave hidden. And we're going to put there again. When you do the ending glitch, the game loads the game has an event to set the camera to focus on certain things instead of there, which exists in the ending cutscene, but is invisible. We're going to get here. And yeah, that breaks the camera permanently until you reload the game. And it's just convenient that we have to reload the game anyways, because that allows us to fix the camera, because maneuvering with that camera is really janky and difficult. So here we are at Balcony. We're going to leave Balcony. So, as you notice, reloading the game is very fast in this game, but it's not all powerful. Sometimes just walking is faster, and this is one of those situations. So we need to get up to Untitled Core, but very conveniently for us, the entrances to go up are just there's scripts. There's nothing special to enter them. So we're just going to come up to the king's table. And again, we can just do the same setup. And now we are at 5. And here we're gonna actually kill the first boss of the run, which is Undead Core. You would think it's Follows or Heavy Quest, but currently, as things stand, there is no possible way for us to kill those without triggering the health sequence, and that sequence, there's just no way to get out of it. And part of the category definition is you have to continuously do all of these, and continuously being saving afterwards, because otherwise it would just make the run less interesting. And while some bosses cannot be permanently killed, and saving after could be considered a little bit silly, it's the spirit of the category thing. Okay, so we're gonna kill the first boss of the game. Yep, this would be perfect.
All right, we got a... Ooh, we have a lot. We have a $50 donation from Dunkathon_Salt that says, "Hey Sierra, super excited for you to show off the most unique version of Cave Story. One of these days, we'll make Cave Story 3D glitch logic for the Cave Story randomizer a real thing. Good luck." We also got a $35 donation from Maddie that says, "I might be biased, but I think Cave Story 3D Reverse Boss Avenger is the best run of the week. Good luck, Sierra, in defeating the bosses in the clearly intended order. Love you." And then we also have a $25 donation from Pokechild that says, "Cave Story opened me up to the world of indie games. Let's get that printy cap."
Okay, so that's Undead Core. I didn't explain it, but basically, the combat in this game is you basically just mash the blade against enemies. That's about it. There's ways you can, of course, speed up boss fights. But yeah, it's basically just spamming the blade, because the blade can only fire one projectile at a time every 4 frames. 2 frames in this game because it runs at 30 FPS. And if the projectile is destroyed, you can immediately fire another projectile. Also, this is one of the added areas in this version of the game. Oh. Something I didn't explain, because I am going to be messing up basically with this whole run, because commentating this game is hard. But if you land after using the booster, and immediately reach out, you preserve the momentum from the booster, which is the fastest competitive movement in the entire game. I think there's faster movement, but the fastest practical movement in the entire game. So, we exited escape sequence into the throne room, and there used to be a different setup for this until I realized you can just item quit there, and now you're back in the King's Table. And we're gonna fight the Doctor, which is going to be a very difficult fight. The Doctor is very powerful, he has a lot of damage, but we do more damage. Because, yeah, the blade wasn't really, or maybe it was balanced for this, and I know nothing, but the blade doesn't seem to have been balanced for just standing inside enemies and mashing them. But that may be intended because it is riskier. We should have done this on the left side, but like, it's fine. So now we killed the Doctor. This is where most of my friends would die, because in the actual route, you get here with 11 HP, rather than 68. And yeah, it's a little dangerous. So we can't actually just drop back down and there's no save point. But luckily for us, going up loads this room as if you were coming up to Undead Core. And we can just drop back down. And this room gets loaded as if you're going back up. And now we can trigger the misery fight. So misery takes only a certain amount of damage for teleporting away. And you can actually deal more damage per teleport with the level 1 blade, because the level 2 blade has 2 hitboxes, and I believe the first one just triggers the teleport. but I haven't really extensively fought Missouri with the Blade 2, so I could be misremembering. So now we've defeated the whole ending gauntlet. For a lot of people, this is where they would be finishing up the game, because not a lot of people end up doing the true ending. However, this is just merely the beginning. So our next boss is what I like to jokingly call the tutorial boss. It is by far the easiest boss in the game by the time you get to it. First, we're gonna enter prefab. Again, the game only checks our iron bond. It doesn't actually care if you save early. We'll be back though. So now we need to get out of there, which conveniently, we have the save file here. And now we need to go fight the Red Ogre, or the tutorial boss, which in this game is at the end of the game. So now we can just exit here. We're in the last cave. Also, I'm not sure, I don't believe I mentioned it, but those presses are actually instant death. So we're going to take it slightly safe here. Well, technically they're not instant death, they do 127 damage. In normal gameplay, you can't get more than 127 HP, but technically we could if we wanted to. I don't feel like sitting there. So yeah, that's the Red Ogre. Don't blink or you miss him. It's really convenient here, because we can actually get back up to level 2 Blade really easily. So, you might notice that we also picked up a Nemesis, which a lot of people might think that the Blade is enough just to kill all the bosses. Like, it does so much damage. What else could we need? Well, Mapignon, who's the next boss, Little Mushroom Friend, is immune to swords, as mushrooms are. And we need a different weapon in order to actually kill him. So, we need to get back to Mega Village in order to get access to him. So I'm going to enter Mega Village and put enter the door. I'm in Arthur's house. We're actually not going to save here. So as I mentioned, we can overflow between areas. We can overflow between scripts. But normally, if you understand the whole opening the inventory list script, also hi Corridor, I'm here for the first time, like 20 minutes into the run or so. Opening the inventory list script, and so it's often going to be very difficult to be able to overflow into other things. But, so you can load the game with the inventory open, but you can exit the game with the inventory still open. Meaning, and when you enter any area, when you load the game, it loads that script. So we can simply just not close the inventory, load an area script. Load an area script, and then open another file, and then interact with something in the inventory to overflow between them. And then we can close the inventory to load the script of the area we were in. So, this next thing, it looks slow, but I promise it saves time. I promise I timed this. Because the Booster 2.0 is just incredibly fast compared to most other forms of movement in the game. So we're going to want it on this file because we have a bit of movement left to do on this file. So we're going to load the time attack. We're going to quit. We're going to load back into file 2. And we're going to interact with the computer, which gives us this 2.0. Now. Oh. Now, there's an interesting thing. So the game has actually 2 scripts loaded at a time. And one of those is called what's called head because that's the file. And the thing about head is it contains a lot of like common actions for the game, like saving. So under ordinary circumstances, you can't just be like, I'm going to save anywhere by loading a save script, because you can't. However, the game has a bunch of leftover scripts from development, and at some point in development, they save points for their own scripts. And the leftovers of it are in 2 rooms of the game, which Yamashita Farm is one of them. we are going to log back into Arthur's house, loading Arthur's house script. We're going to exit game immediately. We are going to load this file, which loads that on top of Arthur's house script. We interact with an item, which activates the doorway to make a village. We close the inventory and make a village to load those scripts, and now we save. Because there aren't a lot of scripts that correspond to the action of talking. So in order to fight Matignon, we need to know that Matignon can cure Curly. And in order to talk to that Hulu, which would tell us that, we need to have done the side quest to save Curly. But of course, we haven't done that because one, it would be very slow, and two, that requires killing some bosses, which we have to kill later. So in order to do that, we can just trigger the event that corresponds to talking to the Cthulhu with those conditions met, which there are only a couple of things in the entire game which actually correspond to that. And good old Big Chungus up here is one of those things. And now we know that we can fight Matignon for Matignon. Okay, am I getting the training cap? Okay, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go grab a printing cap, which is a fun little hack which turns us purple. That's it. That's the effect of the printing cap. So we are going to go grab it. Which, hey, I did good movement for once. Yeah. Okay. So, you might know of Outer Wall. This game added Inner Wall. Sadly, we're not going to see much of it because it is, of course, faster to just type a hit. And we're going to go to the small grave, which is the grave of a printing. Because this game was published by NIS America. And so, of course, there's a shout out to this guy because you can't have it being published by NIS without something to do with printing, isn't it? It's required. So we got a printing cap. We will wear it, I promise. We are gonna wear it. We're gonna go to PlayStation. We're gonna aim quick because it's faster. Okay, I will wear the cap. So, oh, I will not close the inventory. Okay, we are purple now. Okay, and we're back in Storehouse. But also purple. So we are going to need to go back to Graveyard because we never triggered the Balrog event, we have to do it like this. It coincidentally happens to be faster anyways, but we have to do this to get into Graveyard with the second file. And this is the whole reason we set up the second file with the Balrog skip, because we actually can't get to Arthur's house without it. But we need access to Graveyard, and there's sadly no event ID that actually corresponds to the specific action of entering the Graveyard. And now we're going to enter Mapignon's room. We're going to fight another boss, which is relatively straightforward. And I'm just going to try and jump with the boss to do a little bit of extra damage, but there's not a whole lot you can do. So we get the mushroom badge, which is not in fact the mushroom that we came for, even though we already got the mushroom that we came for, but we're just building a little collection. I like those jumps. Good jumps. Okay. We did in one cycle, but it's not even enough hits. So we've killed Matignon. So our next stop is going to be the Sisters, which normally you would skip in any normal speedrun because it's very easy to skip them. because you just simply don't open the chest in that ring. But of course, this being reverse boss order is we have to kill them because they are a boss in the game. So we are going to need to get over to Sisters, which is a little bit complicated. We haven't killed Core, so we can't just go to destroy a corridor. And if we were to go there using the inventory glitch, we get there with a strip loaded, and there's not an easy way to actually restore it to its normal form. So instead, we have to go there manually. Well, as manual as this game gets with going places. So we are going to go through Last Cave, Plantation, Storehouse, Outer Wall. Sadly, we don't get to hear the best version of Outer Wall in the official game, because we will be item quitting there as well. Actual movement. And here we're gonna item quit again. This game also can, so if you know the original game, you might be like, what ID is she gonna use for getting to Sisters easily? Like, you're in that really small room. So among the areas added, there is a corridor detour here, which is an interesting area. Interesting is about all I can say about it. It's cool, I guess. But coincidentally, its entrance from the other end is an entrance we can use. And that would pop us right out here. And we can get to Sisters really easily. And if you're wondering why we didn't collect missiles, it's because I don't want missiles twice in my inventory. We're gonna use a slightly safe strat, which is a little bit slow, but dying is slower. You can stand right here and you just don't do damage. And that is Sister Zone. Conveniently, you get a save point right here. And now we are in a corridor. So our next boss is going to be Ironhead, everyone's favorite fish, I think. Fish robot thing. So Ironhead, you might recall you have to go through the waterway and get to there. You might wonder how to get there like really fast, but again, unused entrances in this game are kind of fun to abuse when possible. And there is an unused exit in Sand Zone, Ironhead. And we're going to get to Sand Zone using the unused exit in Arthur's house to enter Sand Zone for file 3. We're gonna aim it here. Go to file 1, enter this door, and you might notice things are a little bit wrong here. Oh, I didn't feel this to be slightly bad. I mean, not really. It's Ironhead. So yeah, you enter here with like a wrong facing. I'm not really sure why. But yeah, Ironhead is Ironhead as usual. Doesn't take much effort to kill, but can't really hit him while facing when he swims up to the right. So that is Ironhead. This is why we get Arthur's Key, because it's just awkward for routing after this point. Albeit we're not heading there quite yet. So we now need to go kill Core, which I hope you like Ironhead, because we're going back. Because I like Ironhead, he's a friend. So we're gonna go here, Sand Zone, via the unused exit in Arthur's house. Unused exit in Sand Zone to Ironhead. And there's an unused exit in Ironhead's room. I'm gonna be a little safe. Which leads us to the courtroom. And conveniently, right next to the computer. And because, of course, we're loaded and here as intended, we have to do a full sequence here, etc., etc. This would be a good time for a donation, actually.
Okay. We have a $15 donation from Synesthesia. I hope I pronounced that right. To my favorite Cave Story 3D runner, and the only one I know, you've been incredible to us for what feels like the longest 3 years of all time, and we feel proud to count you among our best friends. You're an incredible speedrunner, funny as heck, a great person, and you look good doing it. Best of luck on the run, and greetings from the mythical land of Ohio. Donation goes towards scientific research to determine if Yoshi is a horse or runner's choice.
Alright, so normally here you've got the... I'm not gonna get it, probably.
Hey guys, I just want to apologize. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are getting it fixed as soon as possible. Let me go read a couple of donations while we're waiting. We do apologize for that. We have a $300 donation from Dee Dee that says, "Let's go modern graphics." And then we also have a we got a bunch. We got a $250 donation from Kate Lars that says, "Thanks to everyone involved in GDQ. You guys are awesome. Let's get that Paper Mario Glitch exhibition," which I believe we're close. Let me double check real quick. We're at $10,330. It's $15,000. We are so close, guys. Let's make that happen. We also still have the graphics race going on. Right now, it looks like Classic Graphics is winning by $1,290. Modern Graphics at $1,165. Chris Neerman also donates $15 that says, "Modern? No way. Classic all the way. Thank you for hosting such a wonderful event." We have $35 from Needlekind that says, "Pretty hat get, dude." The pretty. It's so cool. Professor NES says, "Excuse me, Classic Graphics, please." Thank you for that $35 donation. And it looks like we are ready to get back into Cave Story 3D. Take it away, Sierra.
All right, so technical difficulties, we're back, etc., etc. Just pretend I got the quick kill because I paused.
Your game is just so good. It's just breaking all laws of physics.
Yeah, I mean, it is a game for that. Oh my god. I did it. This is a quick kill, I promise. So what you're supposed to do there is you kill it before it ever creates the wind, and then you land in the water so that you start drowning. Because spoilers, I know there's a fun thing that people do in the freeware runs, but like, whatever. You're supposed to drown here. It's like a cutscene. So you can kill the boss such that you land in the water during that cutscene, which causes the air timer to start ticking down a little bit earlier. It's a little bit faster, and of course, killing the boss faster is a little bit faster. That's how that works, yes. So we kill Tor. We're gonna leave Curly here. She's gonna be fine, I promise. You'll see. You'll see. Also, like, sadly, we don't get to go through the best area in the entire game, which is the waterway. So water in this game lags a lot. So as you can imagine, waterway is a treat. So we're gonna get out of there because we need to go kill the bosses in the labyrinth next. Okay. Oh, I did the song this time. No, we're not. So we're gonna go to the correct area that we had to put down. To get ourselves back into the Mimic Village, but this is the whole reason we have a second file just sit here. It's really convenient because Arthur's house really is just the hub of this game. And that allows us to get here. Sadly, we don't get to see Waterway, but trust me, it is wonderful. So we're gonna come here. We're first gonna do the thing that we're supposed to do. So this cutscene triggers, we're gonna get Booster 2.0, even though we already have it. Sadly, it doesn't actually do anything. Because when the game goes to give you an item, it actually checks to see if you already have the item. So we do not get to do Booster 2.0s. So we trigger this cutscene, and then we save in case we soft block, because as you can imagine, soft blocking is slow. We're gonna teleport to the labyrinth. So our first boss here is the third time you fight Balrog. And to get to Balrog here, you need to give the cure-all to Curly, and the cure-all requires killing Pooh Black. However, killing Pooh Black involves killing a boss that we can't kill later, because we have to kill the bosses in the reverse of the intended order. So, the thing is, though, is that the event for talking to Curly in that room, which allows us to trigger the event on the other side of the boulder, exists in the script as usual, and we can trigger it by talking to these flowers, and then when we go back there to interact with the side of that boulder, the game doesn't actually check to see if Curly's actually in that room. The game assumes, because we talked to Curly in that room and we got the flag for that, that Curly must be in that room. So the ghost of Curly is going to continue talking to us there. Sorry, did I say ghost? Curly's not dead, don't worry. I'm gonna... That's intended, I promise. So we can interact with the side of this boulder that we would normally interact with. And we attempt to lift the boulder with the ghost of Curly. And this triggers the Balrog Creep Rate. And there's just a lot of things in this game where it's just like, conveniently, the idea of this script corresponds to the idea of this other thing in this other room. And it just works out. Also, I jumped. I don't know why I jumped. Conveniently, the blade fires slightly behind you. So if I did that properly, I would just simply walk along, match the blade, and Balrog would walk along with me and die. And you can actually kill him before he jumps. So we don't collect the super missiles early on because, honestly, it's just for my own sake, for menuing. It would actually be faster, but we can get the super missiles here on the way. So we are going to return to Arthur's house. So if we go to the left here, there is a barrier in the way that normally opens up when you kill Monster X. Or there's a barrier there that exists to stop you from leaving a Monster X fight. And we will actually load the Monster X fight, but Monster X is not loaded, and it was just a soft lock. And as a result, we can't actually just walk to the left there because it soft locks. But luckily for us, the ID of the room to next to Pooh Black is the same as the ID in Arthur's house. So we can come to Arthur's house, we can go to the door, or go to Labyrinth W, go to Arthur's house, go through this door, we're in the camp. I'm not gonna save because if I die... I mean, if I die, I believe in the fact that I'm commentating. We're gonna come down here. We're gonna do a movement that actually looks okay for a second. And we're gonna fight Monster X. So Monster X is like a cycle-based boss, and you need to move him like back and forth. No. And you can do this on phase, but I'm gonna miss it. On purpose, of course. All mistakes are on purpose. Just to make the run more interesting. So we're gonna do that. This boss, as I understand it, is most people's like stopping point for 3 HP runs of this game casually. Just because of the sheer amount of projectiles, but on easy difficulty with 68 HP, we can very easily just take the hits. Which is good because we actually don't ever want to hit level 3. I didn't actually explain it, but the way Blade works, the level 2 is a stronger hit that hits twice, but the level 3 is like this area of effect attack that is incredibly slow, can't be spammed because you have to wait until all of the projectiles disappear. And so we actually want to keep it at level 2 as much as possible. If we level up to level 3, we have to take damage to drop the level of our weapon. And you'll notice that I'm taking actually all... I never grabbed the clinic key. So you need the key to actually get into the clinic, and I just didn't grab it. Because I was talking. So we grab the clinic key. We're gonna kill Pooh Black, which is another painful boss in runs which don't have far more HP than you would get in the original version of this game. Finally, an F60 is not actually the most HP you can get in a switchless. That number is actually 98 because they add a lot of extra health, which is fair because the game is quite difficult. So there's Pooh Black. I don't really have anything to say on Pooh Black. He sure is there. Okay, next we need to get in the sand zone. So we are gonna look file 2. So the thing about Sand Zone is in order to access the Taroko fight, you normally have to rescue all the dogs. And while I like dogs, rescuing dogs is very slow. So the thing that actually triggers the Taroko fight to be available is entering the second version of Jenga's house, which normally only opens up after you save the dog. But it, again, that entrance is just a script ID in the game. But it requires a lot more setup than most other IDs because it's a very inconvenient ID. Also, if you collect the life capsule up there in Sand Zone, the run is dead. It's a very important life capsule. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna save in Sand Zone. So the script, so something about the routing of this game that I haven't mentioned is almost all of my routing of this game happens in a hex editor. because the actual byte length of the scripts is what is most important here because it loads them into the buffer and never clears that buffer. So now we need to take that script over to Curly's and fall as little as possible, please. Because this door overflows, or rather it allows us to overflow because we need to get into last cave. Wait, remoting. Yes, we need to get into last cave hidden, which we can't actually enter with the other file because it will just go to the regular last cave because it doesn't have the iron bond or and booster 2.0. So now we need to go over to that life capsule, which I just mentioned. Now we need to go over to that life capsule, which I just mentioned. Oh my god. Okay. Which takes us to this specific entrance to Jake's house. We're gonna grab this, which is definitely required, not for safety, I promise. I don't promise. So, if you've been like a little down because I'm cheating, I'm just going through doors all the time, we're actually gonna have to do some platforming here. Because there just isn't a door ID that's like decent to get over the turf right here. So we're gonna actually hit the platform for a second. Oh, please. And we're gonna into the Taroko fight. So Taroko is a boss that in regular speedrun routes, so this is the point in the game where the game gives you Blade. And after this point, bosses tend to have a lot more health. And as such, before this, including this point, bosses don't have very much health compared to what you can do with Blade. So there would normally be strategies for this fight if you were running a glitchless category. So the strategy for all bosses from this point on, for the most part, is how fast can I press the A button? And you're gonna just see just how, like, well, excluding this boss, she likes to jump, which is, like, understandable. You kind of want her to jump to the left, but she didn't. And yeah. So we are going to go back to the left here. In the old versions of the route, this is when you would get Blade. But because of the time attack route, we can get Blade a lot earlier. So, as you know, when we leave here, we're going to trigger a cutscene, which is going to put us back in the labyrinth. And so we got to get out of the labyrinth. And the door in there is actually at a really awkward ID that it's not really possible to get out of there with most common door IDs. So we have to kind of find another way around. But luckily for us, the idea of these robots is ID 200. And ID 200 also happens to correspond to the teleporter in Arthur's house. And the teleporter in Arthur's house is not special. Like, being in Arthur's house does not magically allow you to teleport. So we can just teleport over to A Quarter from here. Get into the robot, teleport as you do. Now, of course, we can't actually teleport easily to Sand Zone. Hang on, pretty good loading. This is not the correct file. So we are going to here. We're going to input, get the stem down. Okay, and then we're going to go here. I'm going to not mess up the route. I messed up the route. Thankfully, due to the nature of this game, it's like very difficult to do anything that permanently breaks the run. This is actually this run might seem very complex, but it's actually a very forgiving run. Okay, so now we're actually going to have to walk over to Omega because there's just no entrances whatsoever on that side of the map. So this is the most platforming that you're going to see tonight. Oh, well, besides the end of the game. So, a fun thing, so because we can't actually item quit in the final area of the game, we actually have to complete the ending of the game as intended. Oh, that's actually... Okay, so... we're gonna fight Omega here. Fight being a very loose term. He doesn't put up much of a fight. Now we need to go fight Curly, who, as you might remember, I said is gonna be okay. And she is. You're gonna see right now. We're gonna go fight Curly, she's gonna be fine.
I just want to remind everyone that the choosing for the final section graphics right now, classic graphics is winning, and it will be for the final area. Which we're starting to get really close, huh?
Yep, we're actually closing in on the end of the run. From here it is largely cleanup. We're gonna fight the last couple of bosses, which more or less don't have that difficult. We're gonna lie to Curly here and tell her that we're gonna kill the Moonigas because there's extra text if we tell her the truth. But it's fine, she'll forgive us. We're gonna shut down, we're gonna go to Arthur's house. And we're gonna be going over the bushlands, which normally you get to like 10 minutes in the run. Well, in the Switch version, I guess. So we're gonna come here, we're gonna save. Oh, we're not gonna save there though. So the thing about bushlands is we can't actually just teleport there. Normally you would just take the teleporter, but we can't access that event anymore. But it's also convenient because we want to be here. So we're gonna save in Bullet Chamber. We're gonna load file 2. We're gonna grab that save point event again. We're gonna do interesting movement. We're gonna input. This is why we grabbed them all the way now. You're gonna find out why we grabbed the map on the second file, and that is for here, near the end of the run. we are going to teleport over to Bushlands. Also fun, we're gonna self-block. A fun fact about the door to Santa's house in this version of the game is, for whatever reason, I guess because they were compensating for the way the camera angle looks, it's a little bit further to the right. And it's not really that significant, but it saves like frames. So here we are. We're gonna then load back into that file. And we're gonna get to Bullfrog real fast. And I remembered to have level 1 blades. That is the reason I was taking all that damage, because that allows a faster kill on here, because of the way the thresholds work. So you've heard of 3-cycle Bullfrog, but have you heard of 2-cycle? You may still not have heard of it, because I couldn't mess it up. But, so the sheer amount of damage you deal with Blade is generally just ridiculous for this kind of game. I'm not gonna get it that way. With proper flashing, you can 2-cycle. That's Bullfrog then. Barely puts up a fight. We're gonna go over to the second Balrog, which actually is the second for us too, so like, hey, good naming scheme. This is why we grabbed the recipe key way at the start of the round. No. We're gonna turn on the fan. Got a cutscene. So, the thing about this category hang on. I just gotta finish up on that one. So yeah, the thing about this category is near the end, like you get this little bit of a breather where killing the boss is really easy. And it's really quite nice because even when not commentating this run, it's kind of a lot. Like, this category has a lot going on, but it's honestly not as intimidating as it looks. Oh wait, no. I almost skipped the boss. So, there's a lot going on in this game, but it's not nearly as complicated as it looks once you understand how the game actually works. Like, something I like to say about this game is that the game is never, like, confused. You are simply confused because you don't understand how the scripts interact. And once you understand, like, how the scripts and the various objects interact, like, what objects correspond to what entities, the game is not actually that complicated. But it can be a lot for some people to wrap their heads around. In fact, it was a lot for me to wrap my head around originally until I had the script system of the original freeware explained to me by Periwinkle, who, if he hadn't explained how the game scripts work to me, I would not be running this game now. So we item quit in a corridor. We're gonna go through the store. We're gonna save Sue because we can't enter the save point to get out without talking to Sue here. Because the barrier is not open because we never did the ID card thing. And Igor is bad. Igor doesn't put up much of a fight when you get here casually, with just the Polar Star. And as you can imagine with the blades, well, I missed 2 hits, unfortunately. Okay, that's Igor done. Okay, and now's a good time if the bid war is still running to close it off because we are closing in on the final area of the game.
And it looks like, I'm gonna double check just be safe. Yep, it looks like we're going with the classic graphics.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So the classic graphics are objectively the worst, and therefore the ones I'm most happy with. They look awful in this game. Just wait, it's gonna be great. A lot of people really, like, a lot of people really don't like this version of the game, and the reason I originally played it is because I was told, don't. This is, like, bad. It's disappointingly bad. And, well, it turns out that I love this version of the game. I unironically think it's the best version of Cave Story. And, yeah, then I decided to speedrun it and look into the glitches, and the record before I started running this game was, I believe, 9 minutes, and NA% is currently just over 3 minutes. Not actually by me, but I don't want to grind out milliseconds on a run that's mostly machine text. And yeah, so we're coming up to the most difficult boss in the entire game. I need to focus quite a bit for this. As you remember, we did Balrog skip, 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 skip at the start of the run. And now we have to fight Balrog. And a little known fact is that Balrog is actually the most difficult boss in the game, because if you muscle memory to know, then the run's over. I mean, you can reload, but it's pain to accidentally say no here because of habit. Because it's the only category, any version of Cave Story, that fights this boss. So we're gonna say yes. And we're gonna do the quick kill here. There's no special quick kill, he just dies fast.
Wow.
The quick kill.
That was quick.
Okay, and that's it. That's the first boss of the game. So we're done,
Yay.
right? Right? We're done. We're done. No, we're not done. So you might be wondering why specifically we needed a file in Alchemy, or rather in the prefab mode. And that is for exactly now. This is why we set up this third file, despite I mean, it was also like good for routing, but oh, God, I think this one. It was good for routing, and we probably would do it anyways. But this is the reason we have to, because how do we get back to prefab 2? Well, this being in the collapsing island state means that this always leads to the second version of Alchemy, and that's the second version of prefab 2. And here we're going to enter the final stretch of the game. I'm going to be a little safe, and now actually is the hardest part of the run. And I need to focus. So for a quick kill on the final boss, we actually want to get level 2 on... I'll safety like castle, just because... Also, I said curly was okay. So we want to get level 2 supers, because it enables a kill on the final boss. I'm not super comfortable with my XP on it, but it's fine because we can just switch over to Blade if we miss it. I also always say that I'm going to do this damageless in marathons, but you know. Marathons rarely work out, marathon runs rarely work out the way you expect them to. Also, if you noticed, that timer is really, really slow. So when they reduced the frame rate to 30 FPS, they never actually compensated the timer. And it just runs slow. Oh, I didn't actually kill him. Okay, and the actual reason I grabbed like a lot was nerfs. So I'm gonna use it. So there are a couple of skips you can do here with missiles. I'm not gonna die. There we go. But I've never actually gotten any of them to work on Cave Story 3D, which I suspect is due to its lower frame rate. Which, the frame rate, the game, you would think that it's just a visual thing. The game's still running at 60 FPS internally. But it's actually running at 30 FPS internally too. Like, it accepts inputs at 30 frames per second, which actually makes a lot of the movement more awkward than the original version. There's a skip you can do here in the freeware version, which I have never successfully gotten to work in 3D. I can do it in freeware, but I cannot do it in 3D for some reason. And here we're coming up on everyone's favorite skeleton, Sam's Cave Story. And just time is going to be on the final text box of the run, not the final hit on follows like other versions of the game, simply due to the fact that you can warp into the ending sequences with glitches. So time will be a little bit after the boss is closing. Also, Bolus has some of the only damage sources in the entire game. They're not actually reduced by being on easy difficulty. Also, runs are done in easy difficulty just because you might as well. Like, it's faster. There's a quick kill you can do, but again, I've never managed to actually successfully get it on the 3D version of the game. That, however, I think is just due to lack of practice on this version of the game for that specific thing. But basically, you would stand on its head and instantly kill the things. And here we're gonna take a damage boost. 1, 2. We're gonna fall apparently. Please. And yeah, super missiles are one of the strongest weapons in the entire game. You can basically just mash them as the projectiles disappear and get an incredibly fast kill. Theoretically, with level it's much faster, but of course, getting the XP for level 3 is not really practical. And yeah, we're coming up on time in about a minute and a half. So yeah. That's Cave Story 3D, Reverse Boss Adventure. It is called Reverse Boss Adventure simply because I'm the only winner and I decided it. But it is essentially just Reverse Boss Order. Yeah, time is coming up at the end of these text boxes. I never said classic graphics. Time.
It looks like your time was 1:16:34.
That's actually a lot better than I thought it was. Wow.
You did really good though. You should be proud of yourself.
World record right now is about a 111.
Oh wow.
And it can go significantly lower. Like, as you saw, my movement, my boss skills, etc. are not particularly great. And like, yes, even the records are not particularly great. If you there sitting at home want to free world records, the rep notes are available. All that you have to do is pick up a copy of the game, and you can have your free world record. I'm more than willing to help people learn this. That's case for 3D.
All right. I'm going to read a couple of donations that I didn't really get to go through, but that's okay. We got a $35 donation from the Luigi guy that says, "This is an insane cave story run, and I'm glad more people get to see this beautiful indie game every year. Go GDQ." Dudeman3000 donates $25 saying, "Much love to the Supreme Dirt, all the runners, commentators, and even Twitch chat, but also much love to the tech crew. Thank you all for doing what you do and raising money for MSF." And then we have a $1,400 donation from Mott that says, "So you're telling me there are wackier glitches in Paper Mario that hot swapping it with OOT? We gotta see this." Thank you so much for that donation. And we are going to be taking a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and read another donation here. We got a $25 donation from Mandelbrot that says, "Here's to another awesome GDQ and helping people around the world." Speaking of helping people around the world, we are now going to be handing you guys off to our interview with Doctors Without Borders with YellowKillerBee and Dr. Jenny Martino from MSF. And this will be my handout. Thank you guys so much. I will see you guys later, but you will be taken care of with the amazing, the Kyle Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching Summer Games Done Quick 2021. I am joined here today by Jenny Martino. She is from Doctors Without Borders. She's a field staff there. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we love seeing you guys and hearing more about what you do with Doctors Without Borders. So tell me a little bit about what a day in the life of someone who's on field staff does.
Okay, so I'm a pulmonary critical care doctor, and I've been with Doctors Without Borders on and off since 2014. I recently came back from Gaza. So I've gone on 7 missions where I've worked as a doctor on all my missions. They varied from like tuberculosis projects to most recently a couple of COVID projects. My past 3 missions have actually been COVID missions. So a typical day in the life is you get up, you go to the hospital, you save 1 million lives. And I'm just kidding you.
Of course you do.
Yeah, of course we do. And we look beautiful while doing it. No,
right,
but,
right. And the windswept hair goes back.
Exactly.
Everyone's like, thank you. Yeah.
No, and we usually round, see patients, talk to the local doctors and nurses, do our work during the day. And then at the end of the day, we go back to our house. So my last 3 missions have been COVID missions. And before that, I actually worked in New York City last April during the huge peak they had there. So I worked there for like 4 or 5 months. Then I've been to Brazil, Lebanon, and Gaza for COVID missions with MSF. And they've been varied from many patients to not so many patients, but they've all been very intense. One thing I've realized is that, COVID's a disease, probably one of the first diseases, at least in my lifetime, that affects like everyone in the entire world. So pretty much no one's immune from it, whether you're rich or poor. No matter where you live, like COVID's unfortunately affected everyone this past year and a half and been a huge part of everyone's lives. So I've had the opportunity to work in New York City, then Brazil, Lebanon, and Gaza dealing with COVID patients. And I think for me, the most important thing I've seen is that I brought my experiences from all the different contexts to each country. And I think it's been really hard for people because so many patients with COVID who end up in the hospital do die. So I think it's been very reassuring to have someone come from another context and say like, yeah, when I was in New York City, a lot of the patients died too. And I know it's really hard, but we just do the best we can. And so for me, I think that's been the most important thing I've brought to the COVID projects is just sharing my experiences and helping them take care of patients.
Yeah, that's amazing. And being able to gather from all those different places, which, like you said, each one has its own challenges, I'm sure, but each one is kind of equalized also by dealing with the same disease, whether it be in Gaza or somewhere else. And so how important are those partnerships? Like you talked about working with the local, medical staff. How important are those partnerships to them?
So I think it is very important for them. My first COVID project was in Brazil. And when I went there, I was working in an ICU that was run by the local hospital. And they basically had surgeons, family practice doctors, and other doctors running very sick, intubated patients, like patients on life support. And a lot of their patients were dying. And so when I came, and I'm an ICU doctor and I could provide support for them, it was just having me there. It was like so relieving for them because so many of their patients were dying. And I was like, this happens, people die, and we just do the best that we can. And so I think just me being there as like an emotional support and also providing medical support was huge for them. Like you could just see like the relief on their faces. And even if the patient still died, because obviously like one person can't, you know, in a big system, I'm not going to sweep in and like save everyone's lives. But even, you know, when people still died, at least I was there telling them, you know, we did everything we could and you guys did a really good job. And they do a really good job. They just needed a little extra support. So it was pretty, I felt very fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I mean, if this has been a hard time for everybody, but especially for the doctors and nurses and everybody who kind of works in that industry, I mean, you kind of have this view of doctors like, oh, they've got everything together. But I mean, it's just as hard for them when they're dealing with something kind of unprecedented like this, I'm sure.
Yeah. And COVID's been really interesting because things change so frequently. Like I've never seen so much research done, and we're learning more every day about COVID. And so it's, you know, medical care is changing as every day goes on, the practice is changing. But to me, it still comes back to the basics, like no matter where you are, like throughout the long run, just like oxygenation, taking good medical care of patients, like that's really what saves the most lives. And you can do that anywhere. So
nice. So, I mean, obviously you're a doctor. And so now, how long have you been working with MSF?
Since 2014.
Okay.
And I do some work in the United States, and then I go and do international work. So.
Nice. So what is different about working with MSF than working like in the private field, in the medical field?
So the reason I actually started working with MSF is because I got really sick of the medical field, like being a doctor for money and whatnot. And the great thing about Doctors Without Borders is that we help everyone. Like unequivocally everyone, no matter your religion, no matter your sex, no matter your beliefs, like we help everyone. And it doesn't matter if you have money, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. And so it's really just taking care of people to take care of people. And so that's what I really like about MSF and working with MSF. I got a little tired of taking care of so many people who just have everything given to them. And you go to these other countries and you see people who have to fight for everything and food and they're still really happy a lot of the times. And it kind of gives you a whole new perspective on life. And so for me, it's really important. And I do think I actually gain more when I go on a mission than I give. Hopefully I give something, but it does feel like I get more in return when I go on a mission.
Yeah. So let's talk specifically about Gaza, because you just got back like very, very recently. We're actually recording this like a couple days before the event starts, but you just got back from Gaza. So were there any like specific challenges that were unique to that area?
So the specific challenges of Gaza were, well, first I was delayed going because of the fighting. So they couldn't get permission to go. And then I arrived, I think, in Gaza 2 days after the fighting had ended. Oh, wow. So, of course, that's a big emotional upheaval for the entire country. So besides COVID, they also had injuries related to the fighting. So that was challenging. And there was evidence of destruction in the streets. And it was just quite challenging from that aspect. Like somehow COVID didn't seem as important when there were so many other things going on. So
it's amazing how something even like COVID can take a back seat when, you know, it's so tumultuous in a certain area.
Yeah, I think in certain settings, when there's war or fighting in any country, you know, people forget about coronavirus and COVID and and of course, other things do take priority. So.
For sure. Well, I think it's great that you're able to help out, you know, in the places that need it most and kind of all over the world. Because I mean, it's something that really connects us together, that universality about needing help and needing that emotional support. I think that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. But I do want to take like a last minute and just talk about the event. Were you familiar with Games Done Quick before you kind of came on with Doctors Without Borders?
I would like to say yes, but the answer is no. No, I looked it up when they told me about it. It seems like a great event. And, you know, thank you guys for supporting Doctors Without Borders, because without all the generous donations people give, we wouldn't be able to do the work we do. So we need everyone. We need doctors. We need support. We need logisticians. We need everyone to do the work we do. And so thank you to everyone for helping us make that possible.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where you may not have heard of the event, but you were a gamer back in the day. I heard someone told me that that you are not averse to playing some games as a younger person. So what were some of your favorite games as a kid?
So as a kid, definitely Super Mario, Duck Hunt, Legend of Zelda, Tetris. Those are kind of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like racing home from school and trying to beat my brother upstairs so to see who would get to play first. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you know, my sister was the youngest, so she usually got like last place. But
yeah. I can definitely relate to that. And I think part of it is like people are like, oh, you're watching other people play video games? That's kind of weird. But didn't we all kind of do that as siblings? Because, you know, you had to take turns and you only had one TV. So you ended up watching each other play probably as much as playing anyway. So I think that's part of the reasons. It's this natural kind of transition to that.
Yeah, we did it before it was like cool to do that. Like,
we were the front runners. Let's point that out right now. Trailblazers. So exactly. Well, Dr. Jenny Martino, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for everything you do with Doctors Without Borders. We really appreciate all the help that you're giving to other doctors and patients, of course, all over the world. And we just appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the work you guys do and making our work possible. We're all a nice team, so thank you all.
Exactly. It's great to be, you know, able to contribute to what you're doing, and we love doing it. So thank you again. Thank you everybody for watching. This is Summer Games Done Quick 2021. Make sure to stay tuned for more great runs coming up next.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Summer Games Done Quick 2021 online, powered by Twitch. My name is the Kyle Thomas. I'm going to be your host here for the next couple games. Thank you so much to YellowKillerBee and Dr. Martino for that awesome interview. It's so great to hear about all the things that are going on, and I love when I hear those doctors talk about back when they played video